We're at 7 o'clock. Everyone rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming. I'm going to move to public comment. Don Hoffner.
So I have a comment as a citizen, not as a fire commissioner, and that is while attending the Board of Finance meeting we recently had 2 weeks ago, give or take, I was a little upset with the comment the gentleman made about his friend about the small amount of tax abatement or tax refund for a fully disabled war veteran. I did see one or two of the board writing notes down when this was taking place. So I think it would be great if you readdress that, how that equation is done, and definitely relook at it. Whether the man's numbers were correct or incorrect, it's definitely worth looking at.
Thank you. Hi, Kathy, come on in. Thanks, Don. Any other public comment? Jackie?
Good evening. My name is Kathy Zandi, and I live in the Beechwood community, which is managed by the Sun Corporation. I'm here tonight to ask that you consider forming a fair rent commission for the town of Killingworth. Our land fees have gone up almost 10% in the last 2 years. Since we are a 55-plus community, this pattern of increase is alarming. Most of us are on fixed incomes, and we do not want to get to the point where we have to choose between essential needs or paying our rent. Some residents have had to start working again, and some have had to choose to move to less desirable dwellings. We realize the cost of everything has been increasing, but our community has not only had increases to our fees, but has also had diminishing services in our community. A fair rent commission is essential to supporting vulnerable populations like Beechwood, who are facing rent hikes that could price us out of our housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
So, the issue of a one-time monetary grant of $10,000 to the Killingworth Krier from pandemic monies, as recommended in a 5-1 decision by the Economic Recovery Committee at their special meeting last Tuesday night, is on the agenda tonight for approval by you. I'd like to remind you that the matter up for discussion is really not one of the town funding the Krier. It's also really not a matter of how much impact the Krier had on dispersing COVID information over the period of time, although that really was very impactful and significant. It's also not really a discussion regarding the First Amendment or the Constitution. We've been through that. Lastly, it's not really a discussion regarding whether the business or entity itself, the Krier, is going to be in a different situation years down the road. That's something none of us can accurately figure out. Pandemic funding is, however, if I understand it correctly, available to be dispersed to town entities, programs, nonprofits, businesses, or individuals negatively impacted by the COVID epidemic. The key words being negatively impacted by the pandemic. And we have an Economic Recovery Committee in place to help determine where those funds should be allocated. In that light, the request for funds for the Krier fit perfectly into this. The Krier has lost money through the pandemic, specifically because nobody was available to do business. If you don't do business, you don't advertise. It's a really simple equation. We know that the Krier, we've been through this. We've all had all of the information, we get like a glut of information about the Krier. We know that it is funded by advertising. We know they have a shortfall. That shortfall means that that $10,000 that I'm going to go back and read. I was better when I read. I need to go back and read.
You're doing fine. You're doing good.
The $10,000 in discussion would go a long way to putting the Krier back in the black, giving us the ability to go ahead and either resecure our advertisers or find new ones. And we are definitely going to be doing that. In summary, I love this part. In summary, the Krier was significantly negatively impacted financially by COVID, making it a textbook example of how this money should be allocated. This was recognized by the Economic Recovery Committee, hence the recommendation before you today. I strongly encourage you, as a resident of the town and a member of the Krier Committee, to vote unanimously to go ahead with this. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Eileen.
Thank you.
Well
Thank you.
said, Eileen.
Anyone else?
Good job.
Yeah, I'm here with Jackie from Beechwood, and I'd like to put a personal spin on a few things. Since Sun Corporation has taken over, they've really increased the monthly or yearly rent that everybody is paying monthly. And there's a lot of people who are on fixed incomes and who are in their mid-70s and have to go back to work. And you may know us, you know, older people work in grocery stores. And this is really tough on them. And also working in fast food restaurants. And we have meetings where they've come and they've talked to us personally. And it's tough hearing their stories, you know, seeing them cry and stuff like that. And other people that have to moved out and moved into condos that have to walk up 3 stores. And what happens when they're in their mid-80s? You know, when I mean walk up 3 stories of stairs, forgive me. And it's really tough to hear. And then also, what happens when these people are in their mid-80s? Are they going to be still working in grocery stores? And that's hard to hear. And then another lady, you know, she had to say, I had to go talk to my daughter because I know if they keep raising the rents like this, I won't be able to stay here. And I had to have a one-on-one talk to my daughter saying, hey, I'm going to have to sell this place in a year or two if they keep raising the rents like this, and I'm going to have to move in with you, and I'm going to give you everything I have, and then you can have my Social Security. Is that okay? That's heartbreaking. And she goes, and how she's making it now? She's cleaning houses. She's in her mid-70s cleaning houses. That's tough. That's, you know, where's the dignity for that? So this Fair Rent Commission really helps out. When Jensen's had it, they only raised up 1 to 2 to 3%. We went back. Our selectmen seen the rent. So we need this Fair Rent Commission to slap, you know, the Sun Corporation, who's also hasn't played fair with this town. If I'm not mistaken, they haven't paid their taxes on the transfer fee to this town. That's over, if I'm not mistaken, please correct me, over $150,000 plus to the town of Killingworth. You know, they've tried to get away with that. So this is a multi-million-dollar corporation that has hundreds of lawsuits against them nationwide. They've tried to get away for not paying, and they've taken away many services from the Beechwood community that Jensen always provided the organization. So I'm asking, please, that the 3 selectmen support this for the community of Beechwood, and also for the town crier too, because when we told them that the Board of Finance turned it down, a lot of people were shocked. Of the signatures that were handed in, well over 150 came from the community because all the shut-ins really enjoy reading that. They look forward to that. It's the only thing about the community. And when we told them it was shut down, they were like speechless. I mean, at the meeting you were at on Wednesday, and they were like, whoa, why? They were like shocked. They were surprised. And then we had another coffee house meeting on Sundays, and we told them it was voted against, and there weren't going to be another crier. And they were also like, why? I mean, it's something that, you know, it's very active in the community. It talks about the community. It tells people what's going on. Why would they do that? It seems like a very positive thing. So there's 2 things I'm talking about, but one is basically the Beechwood, and then another thing is the crier too. And people look forward to it, especially the shut-ins and the senior citizens. And, you know, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Anyone else?
I feel inappropriate talking about the town business in general. I'm Christine Goupil, I'm the state representative. As you know, I'm a big advocate of the Fair Rent Commissions. We have one in the town of Clinton. I've sat on the meetings. It's a very effective process, and it gives an opportunity to people in the community who do not have the affordability to find legal counsel. It also allows people to act in more of a group fashion when there are situations where there is retaliation, where there is increases and decreases in services. You know, I know that you're, you know, very much in favor of it. I voted in favor of it at the legislature this past session to continue to apply fair rent commissions of municipalities of 20,000, we went up to 20,000 residents. It didn't apply to the smaller municipalities yet. I don't know if they're gonna consider that in the housing commission. But I'm happy, to talk about my experience in the town of Clinton and how beneficial it was. It really is a mediative process. It's not a process where everybody's going to court. Nobody wants to see that happen. It's trying to find common ground with the property owners and the people, the tenants, to just have a beneficial relationship, and then the town also has just a good sense of what's going on in the community. So I'm an advocate for it, so I do hope you will consider it. It will give the folks at Beechwood some leverage in what they're dealing with. I don't know the end goal for some communities. I've been paying close attention to what they're doing across the country and Canada as well. And it seems as though it's an opportunity for them to raise the overall value of their property, reduce the services, but it impacts the assessments, which thus impact their taxes. Connecticut isn't the same as other communities across the country, so the tax consequences doesn't necessarily apply universally across the country, so you're probably not going to see anything federally, and we'll have to address it within Connecticut. So other options are dealing with it in the legislature, but that's a slower process and it takes a whole another year. So the Fair Rent Commission is there for your use.
Thanks,
Thank
Kristen.
you.
Thanks. Anyone else?
I'm just gonna, may I?
No. By all
So
means.
uncomfortable. I was at the meeting on Wednesday with as a concerned resident, and I can tell you, after sitting in this room, listening to the residents who live in Beechwood, we really need to take a look at what's going on there. These people are such a vital part of our community. We just spent, God only knows how much money on our children, and we need to do that, and that's super important. But this group of people is equally as important. They're important. We can't just turn our backs on them. I am going to continue to advocate for them, so get used to me. That's it.
Thanks, Eileen. Anyone else?
The Board of Ed report, I don't know where it fits in the agenda.
It's.
I'm on the agenda.
You're on the
Okay.
agenda,
Okay.
so you're
I
good.
printed out the one from the website, I didn't see it.
Thank
Thank you.
All right. At this point, we have a guest from Hooker and Holcomb, and I move to allow the KVFC KAA Service Recognition Plan update from Hooker and Holcomb as the next agenda item. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. So with that, Bill, you want to,
Good. I'm sure glad that passed.
You don't want to spend the night here with us?
you may want
Do
to
you
pull.
want to sit here? I can.
I can,
You know what, I can shift over, there's a chair
Actually, I
right
can
here.
write on that too, right? All sorts of stuff. That's the building maintenance list.
It's very important to Bill.
Highly technical.
Well, yeah, it's out of my league. So just a couple comments about the process. The current actuary, the TPS group, they did a pricing based upon 2021 data and 2021 assets. And I can't really match that because it's not a published piece of work. Usually the evaluation is published. So in my profession, I want to make sure that I'm matching something that's published. So I went back to the 2019 valuation. I got the data and I matched the valuation. So that was my first step, was to try to match the valuation and see if I believe their numbers, and I do. We have the liability for TPS group and the H&H liability. Roughly $2,081,000. And roughly $2,074,000. So this is for the 2019 valuation. So this was within 0.3%, or it's 99.7% accurate. So it's a good match. I usually don't get that close. My goal is to get less than 2% or at least 98% accurate. So it's good that I was able to match that, those liabilities. Then the next step was we looked, they have this thing they call the ADEC, which is the actuarial determined employer contribution.
I know, I had to look that up.
Yeah, me too. But anyway, so when on the 2019 valuation, TPS, you know, they have this thing they call the normal cost, which is basically the future service cost. That's the language version. So that, on that valuation, they were $18,320. And the past service cost, or they call it the amortization, I'll just do amort. That was $70,358. And that gave us a total of $89,178, which was your ADEC that you're working on your budget. Now, for some reason, all the actuarial systems, the normal costs on this particular cost method, they never match. So we got a different number, and it didn't surprise me. And I talked to the other actuary about it. He says, yeah, he doesn't match anybody with this particular normal cost. So when I ran it through our system, I got 24,250.
354.
354. Just testing you. Okay. You passed. And the amortization of 70,000. You got that number too?
263.
263. So you can see the amortization, the past service cost, very close because the liability is very close. So, no. So this came to 94,627.
617.
617. Okay. So what I like to do is, now that I've matched their valuation, I like to use this as my baseline and run everything through my system so I can tell you how much it costs. So this 94,000 becomes the new baseline. Now you'll notice when you come to 2021, a lot of those costs that he did, and I didn't analyze his costs, but they're lower. And one of the reasons why is you had good asset performance and you had a lot more assets. So that makes all this past service costs lower. So that's one of the reasons that his numbers were lower in some instances. And he also, I think he had less people too. So the census was different. So we had two things that were different. But it was important to me to match a valuation that was published. I kind of have to follow my standards and do that. So we're going to use 94,617 as the baseline. Remember that number. What was that normal cost again? You got the number?
24,354.
And the amortization was?
70,263.
And for a total of 94?
94,617.
Okay. So this is what I'm going to call the baseline, current plan, whatever you want to call it. And then what we did is, let's go to the $800 plan. That was the next step. Now there was some, I'm reading through the minutes, there was some discussion on how the $800 plan works. In other words, do you get it if you're already past 65 or not? So we did it two ways. So the $800 plan, our first situation was no retroactive stuff. In other words, if you're 65 or older now, you just keep collecting your benefit and your benefit doesn't change. So we priced it that way, and then we did one more way to look at it for the town. So the $800 plan, have you got that number?
The 800, no, I don't.
Which one? The total or the?
24,209? Is that?
Yep.
Good. That's the normal cost part, and the amortization is
883.
Now, of course, actuaries live for stuff like this. You know, why does this plan cost less than that plan? I mean, that like made our day once we had to figure out why that happened. And what happens is that in this plan, now we have people retiring later. So they're not collecting their money quite as early. We had to come up with a retirement assumption as to when people will retire. I don't know when all the people are gonna retire, but what we did is we said, if you're 65 through 74, we thought there was a 10% chance of you retiring each year. So part of a person retires each year, if you will. That's the way it works. And then once you get to 75, we assumed everybody retired. So that's the way we did it. And so people are generally retiring later. Here, everybody retires at 65. So you're getting the benefit sooner. Here, you're getting the benefit a little later, but it might be a little bit more. So these are actually pretty close to the same cost. When you look at the normal cost part of it,
Yeah.
it's pretty close. So it's not really, I didn't see a big cost to the town to go to this $800 plan. And that's where it's not retroactive. So how do I explain that? Not retroactive. In other words, if you're 65 or older now, you just continue as a retiree. You don't get this benefit of the $800 deal. And then what I'm going to call the $800 retroactive plan. Now what we did is we actually changed the census. We left anybody that was age 75 or older, we left them as retired. We didn't consider that the 78 people that are 75 or older are going to get the $800 benefit. But the people 65 to 75, who according to Gina's census were still actually working, and there were 6 of those people, and so we said they're going to be eligible for the $800 plan. And so that plan costs a little bit more because you're given some retroactive numbers.
30,020.
30,020?
I'm back on the same page.
Good. And then 76?
76090. For a total of 106,110.
So this plan is definitely costs more than the other one, and it costs more than the current plan. So that's kind of what I wanted to report to you. We used, our papers disclose the plans provisions that we assumed, and it discloses all the assumptions that we used. So that's my 2 cents on the plan. Any questions?
I just want to clarify, we keep saying retirement, it's an employee recognition plan because
Yeah.
people continue to work even though they're collecting their retirement pay.
Right.
Right,
And these are not retirement plans. They're length of service award programs. People call them LOSAPs. They're not qualified like your retirement plan that you have at work and like the one that the town may have. So they're not qualified plans. For instance, I had one town nearby where I live asked me about putting in a lump sum provision in their plan. But those of you from qualified plans know that you can get a lump sum and you can roll it over. But if you're in this plan which is non-qualified, it's under section 457 of the code. If you get a lump sum, you have to pay taxes on it all right away. So there's no particular advantage to adding a lump sum provision to this volunteer fire plan. It's probably better to spread out the taxes and pay it all at once. So that's some of the examples. So everybody kind of takes their benefit at 65. So under this new plan, everybody would take their benefit at 75. And they would have a chance if they kind of, I don't know if you call it retired or stop working, to take their benefit earlier. So we got those eventualities in there as well. So
again, they don't stop working.
Right.
They can if they choose
They can.
to, but they get it's employee recognition plans. When they start to collect is probably the verbiage, right?
yeah, and one of the things it's hard to say about this is if you put this in, and some of the people that, let's say you're now 70 years old and you want to get the $800 plan, does that mean you give back your prior money? I mean, I didn't price it that way.
What do you mean by that?
You collected.
There's a transitional adjustment if you.
Yeah, so I didn't price it that way, so that would certainly help reduce the cost if those folks gave back their money. But do they, I think they have the option of kind of keeping their benefit they have now.
So you're talking about if we reopen the plan for people
Right.
to go back, and has that been done? Have you done that for any other town or entity where you've reopened a plan?
I haven't seen a past 65 thing. Just everybody seems to go with the, follow the leader, and everybody does age 65. But it doesn't mean you have to. I mean, people are starting to work a little bit later. Yeah. So.
And Linda is still working on the plan, so those types, Linda Urson is the pension attorney. So in thinking through all of this, we gotta make sure those provisions are stated so that we understand the full impact.
Yeah, you have to understand the rules, because if you don't, it might cost you more than you were planning on.
Yeah. And even in thinking through the process, so we've had the peer review, and Bill, thank you, this came out phenomenal in terms of getting to the less than 2%, so, you know, certainly
Yeah,
good work.
so this gives you an idea of, this measures the relative cost of all these things
Right.
for you. And I think the other thing you might wanna take a look at, I told this to Gina, is that now that the plan's a little bit better funded, you can do some asset smoothing so that your contribution doesn't jump around from year to year. So I would kinda suggest using some asset smoothing. I wrote Gina a little blurb on it, but I think that would help. You know, if you're less than 50% funded, like the plan was for a while, then you don't wanna do that. But now the plan's getting better funded, and there's no sense in not doing that. So asset smoothing, like in a year like 2021, where you did really well, you'd have to put in a little bit more money. And let's say, if the market continues as it is now, the next year you would put in less than you would if you use asset smoothing. So it works both ways, in good times and in bad.
So in simplistic terms, the ADEC,
Yep.
this bottom number on your letter, that's what would come out of the annual budget.
Right. Right. It
So
has-
we're talking an increase of the 106,000?
Yeah, so you got,
That's the
so
annual
the increase is about 12,000? Is that right?
Well, this is based on 2019
2019, yeah.
census data versus 2021 census. I think that's the difference that we're
Yeah, his,
looking at.
yeah, so I wanted to compare the published numbers, so that's why
Yeah,
I
I
wanted
got
to do
you.
it this way. So, anyway, this plan a little bit more expensive, but it's not, you know, what is it? 10%, costs 10% more. This plan costs about a little bit less, so. But it also depends upon when people actually retire, because it seems to be, I think if people retire earlier and start getting money earlier, this cost might go up a little bit. So there's a lot of assumptions you can make.
Again, it's not when they retire, it's when they start to collect.
Right, it's when you start to collect
right.
benefits, yeah, I'm
Yeah,
so
when
used
you
to
start
saying
collect
retire,
the
yeah.
recognition plan funds.
Right.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah, thanks, Bill.
Thank you very much.
enjoyed it, thanks for inviting me, I appreciate it.
So as I said, the Linda Urson, the pension attorney, she is working out the details of the plan. Once the plan is drafted, it'll have to go back to the pension committee for further review and then come back here for our endorsement of that. And Dave Tice, I've reached out to him to start drafting the ordinance that supports the stipends as well. So there's no further action today, but I just wanted to get everyone up to speed.
Thank you, Nancy.
All right, we're gonna get to you, Kathy, in
Oh,
just
yeah.
a minute. Approval of minutes. I move to approve the minutes of the Monday, April 25th, 2022 regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen.
I'll second.
Discussion?
There is, and we'll get to my minutes, please. I had a couple of questions. On page 3. I have a question mark here, I'm not quite sure why. Gorski reported on recent efforts to obtain a second actuarial review of the pension plan. There was discussion about the challenges involved with their working from a somewhat different set of assumptions. I think that needs to be broken. I agree. You know, the first statement reported on recent efforts to obtain a second actuarial review of the, it says pension plan, period. I don't believe you had raised anything about challenges involved with working from a different set of assumptions.
I think we talked about the different census data. That's where I thought that came from.
Well, okay, if you're comfortable with it, I didn't recall you talking about that, but all right. Next paragraph down, town meeting 30. What am I missing there?
Once the town meeting,
Where are
They
you?
will initiate the ordinance and hold the town meeting 30 for approval.
once the BOS has the actuarial review, draft pension plan and ordinance, the BOS will initiate the ordinance. So by charter,
Yeah.
oh, 30 days.
30 days, okay.
30 days, I got it. So we initiate the ordinance, and
Yes.
30 days later, we go to town meeting. I got your,
Hold the town meeting 30 days later,
yep.
okay.
Is it for approval or for codification? For
It has
approval.
to be approved,
Approval.
and approval essentially is codification. Because there's a process afterwards for it to be codified.
That's all I have.
Jamie, anything from you?
I was not there, so I have to abstain.
Oh, yes. All right, where's my cheat sheet? Okay, Liz. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed, abstentions.
Aye.
Okay. Moving forward, I move to approve the minutes of the Thursday, May 5th special meeting of the Board of Selectmen. Do I have a second?
I did not see those.
I don't know that I
They weren't in the
saw
packet
those
that was
either.
sent electronically.
No,
And
they're not in my packet either.
Can we
so I guess we have to table that.
table that?
Table it.
I believe I read them, but I don't have them in this packet.
Well, it'll, because there was no second, it'll, what's that low flowery term, it'll fail for the lack of a second. Refunds and abatements, I move to approve the following refund to James J. or Catherine M. Grasso for $6.74.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Lastly, before we get on to, department reports, I move to appoint Rosalind Reeps, Democrat, to the Conservation Commission. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Can you tell me the background?
Rosalind, Willow, Disbrow resigned.
Uh-huh.
And Rosalind Reeps, her background, she is formerly from the DEEP. She's been active in doing other work, volunteer work for the town, and she's been interested in taking on more roles.
She ran conservation programs in the state of Washington. She ran a number of conservation programs and support in DEEP for the state of Connecticut for a number of years as well. And she's now in our town and has a couple little kids. So.
Great.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I will send a letter of appointment to Rosalind as well as to Dawn. Those are the notes that as Elizabeth is walking out the door, she makes sure I know what I have to do. All right, department reports, there's a number of department reports. We do have a building report. I think there was a library report sent in a separate email. But now we have live and in person, BOE.
Hey. Let me dance first. So Kathy Zandi from Board of Education, giving a March-April update. So we were busy with the budget in March, and so this is a combined 2-month update. So first of all, so lots in here. First of all, Cougar Pride. So our KES first grade teacher, Dorothy Lamazzo, shared her first grade class's Positively Positive Best Buddy program. They partnered with we love when we see students. Oh my God, it's the best. They partnered
I love
with
to
the-
see them too.
Oh, they're so adorable. They partnered with the Daniel Cosgrove Animal Shelter, so some of the students from the class were in the audience, and two spoke to us about what they had learned about the program. Mrs. Lamazzo shared a video from their interview with News Channel 8 and a slideshow of their work. The students made blankets and also raised money to donate to the shelter, so that was fantastic. Our wrestling team was, for the first ever, won Class S state title this winter. The first time in history our wrestling team has won the state title. We had 4 wrestlers who were state champs in their weight class. 7 wrestlers made it to the finals. Our coach is Nick Adler, won Class S head coach of the year. Ken Marquardt won Class S assistant coach of the year. The wrestlers Ethan Wright, Benjamin Williams, Nicholas Glenn, Kevin Napolito, and Jake Martone and Ryan Duncanson were all recognized and presented with a certificate that night. So fantastic news from our high school sports. We've been very busy, as I said, on the budget. So we had a number of workshops through March and April. Superintendent, administrators, we had meetings with the town representatives from Abatement, Killingworth. The budget was approved by the board unanimously on May 3rd, and then went to May 3rd referendum, as we know now that passed, but in both Abatement and Killingworth, which is great news and a really huge show of support for the community of our students. We had a pretty flat budget in the last several years. Due to COVID, we tried to keep it really, really flat, and it was time to really invest, it's great that the town supported us. So thank you to everyone who came out to vote. We had an audit report, so Michelle Lozo, our auditor, presented her summary from the 2020-2021 audit. That's incorrect, it's the 2020-2021 audit. Advised that the report showed no negative findings, and the unassigned fund balance of $606,491 will be returned to the towns. Okay. Graduation, so our high school graduation date is set for Friday, June 17th. The last day of school is actually on Tuesday, June 21st, as long as there are no more out-of-school days. We also have updated and approved an updated 22-23 school year budget. We moved one day from the December, an extra day off in December vacation, which will be not made up, but moved into June. All those can be found on our website, by the way. So our policy committee is very busy. I don't know if we haven't talked about policy so much, but we have 2 massive binders of district policies, and we are in the process of updating them all. Many of them are from 2009 and before. We're working through the audit series 2000 and have updated weighted grading, calculating class rank, and are working on also a transportation policy. So lots and lots of work in the policy committee recently to just contemporize all of that, much of which is statute driven, of course. From curriculum, we had an update from our English Language and Arts, ELA program. So the state has recently passed legislation to require a science of reading based curriculum. And so we're working on piloting the new curriculum has to be in place in the 23-24 school year, so next school year. They usually, when they pass curriculum, they give us some time to, pilot and get it in order. So this year we're piloting several different programs in order to pick one that we like best for the next school year.
Can you describe what science of reading is? What does that mean?
Well, science of reading is almost, if you will, going back to the old way of reading, which is more learning sounds and word pieces and then putting them together. And lots of phonics, lots of sound, combining the visual with the phonics. In the more recent, I'll date myself and say that's how I learned how to read. In the most recent past, they've gone through more of association. So they'll have in the most recent past, in Teachers College, they'll have a picture and then a description of the picture. And so the children are trying to inference what they're reading by the picture, as opposed to learning long A, short A, long O, TH, and different pieces of words. So we're going back to learning pieces of words so that they get the mechanics of reading, as opposed to this inference of looking at the picture and almost kind of guessing what the text is. So it's a little bit more, I consider it a little bit more mathematical way of learning how to read.
Thank you.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's see, what's next on here? Okay, communication, so, hopefully those of you who had any questions about the budget this year, so our communications subcommittee spent a lot of time generating a Q&A. We experimented with a Q&A on Facebook. We're a little hesitant to go on Facebook with information because Facebook can get complicated very quickly. So what we did is we put in a Q&A document on Facebook, turned off the comments, but put a link in where people could submit a question and then we would answer it. We didn't want to have comments on there because those can just go out of control, as we all know, very quickly. So we're trying really to limit comments so that it's just an information from us to the community, but we want to hear what the community has to say with questions. So that seemed to work actually pretty well this year. All those Q&A and information is usually on our website as well, but we find the more ways we can get it out to the community, the more education we can provide. And finally, something else we haven't talked about so much recently is the Strategic Planning Committee. So in the background, we've been doing a huge amount of work on strategic planning. And so recently our Strategic Planning Subcommittee has looked at survey data, focus group data, interview data. We had a whole series of strategic planning focus groups with different administrators, teachers, students, community members, and former students, alumni, and we're putting that all together. The final report is going to be presented in May to the board. So if anyone's interested in our strategic plan, there's a whole bunch of information again on our website. So welcome everyone to do that. And finally, my final closing is rsd17.org. Our website has all sorts of information, strategic planning, curriculum, everything that I talk about almost every time. All of our minutes can be found on the website.
Thanks, Kathy.
Okay.
Thanks, Kathy. I will say that Jeff reached out to both Bob McGarry and I. He would like to set up a capital planning meeting. He's trying to get that, well, we told him sooner rather than later so that they can understand their capital needs.
Yep.
I'll let the two of you know when that's potentially scheduled for.
Great. And that's been based on a request from both towns for that kind of discussion. Yeah. Okay.
Great.
Right. And we were able to pass an increased capital budget allocation this year.
Yes, I think there was a state statute change.
Yes, that allow us
Yes.
to go from 1% to 2%, and we added that in, and that was approved, which is great. And we already have plans to spend it because, as we know, our schools are not young.
Correct.
Only one of them is young, the others are not so young.
Thank you.
Great.
Any other questions?
I have a question since you raised the capital piece of it. It keeps coming back and back and back again about this limit on what we can budget for in terms of capital. And I went and looked at the language, and I believe you could budget as much as you want based on your capital needs. What you can't do is you can't budget for an allocation of capital to war chested. I believe that's the restriction.
That's right. That's
So,
right. Yes,
but
that's
it's
right.
being
Yeah.
explained a different way in that we can't spend more money than 1 or 2% of the budget, and that's not.
It's not, right,
case.
the 1 or 2%.
I'm asking, really.
Yeah, no, that's right. So the 1 or 2% out of our 42 million, the 1 or 2% can be set aside for capital, which can be rolled over year to year.
Exactly.
The rest of it, the 98 or 99% must be spent
In the year
in
that
the
is
school year
budgeted.
or returned to the town, which is this capital fund of the audit fund balance I told you about a minute ago. Right, we must return everything to the town if we don't spend it. So we could put a purchase of something, and we do, of course, put purchases of things in the annual budget as well. Yeah. Yeah, but major thing, I mean, the problem with that is if you put a solar project or a lighting project and add, $8 million or roof, right? You add $8 million into the standing
Sure.
budget, it throws your numbers way out of whack. Yeah.
Thank you.
Then there's issues with that in the following year, because you can't actually drop your budget year to year by state statute.
Correct.
Yeah. So once
Say that again?
you can't, there's a state statute that says you can't, I don't have the exact details, but you can't drop your budget year to year unless you have a significant reason. So if you have a huge, enrollment decrease, that sort of thing.
It's a certain percentage, you can't drop it.
Yeah,
I would think a major capital project would be a significant reason, but I just wanna be sure that we don't use that limit as an excuse for continuing to defer maintenance, because that comes back
Right.
in the long term.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm pleased with what the boards are doing, and I think there's a lot of focus in that area. I just wanna make sure
Yeah.
that translation is clear to the taxpayers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kathy, can you take back to the board, I think we said this at the group meeting with, when the towns met with Board of Selectmen, but I think Suzanne and the Board of Education did a tremendous job with the superintendent in preparing us, getting us information, doing the presentation, answering all of our questions, with the boards of finance there as well. I thought they were excellent, and it helped particularly me because it was my first time going through it. It laid a good path, and I think it was collaborative and constructive, so thank you.
I'll pass it. I did pass that last time, but I'll pass it again. Yeah.
But I think in that it was passed, I think there was a lot of positive that came out of it, in terms of distribution of information from the folks that were at the meeting, so.
Great.
So we didn't have to go to a referendum twice.
Yeah.
This time, so it was nice.
You
I think,
were
what
happy
was the
to-
record? We had a record where, how many times we go back? 13, 14,
Yeah, that was
feels
before my
like,
time.
yeah.
It was a lot, yeah.
So it was a lovely outcome.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you.
Gina, 21-22 budget report, anything to report? Okay, any questions?
No, thanks, Gina.
Thanks for all the reports that you shared this week.
I'm gonna share that with the two of you. So, moving on to new business, this is multi-factor authentication. So Gina and I met with Seidel Associates and CT Comp to perform a technology review. So this was new to me, coming in as first selectman to meet with those folks. One of the things that they recommended was for us to improve security, and as a first step for the town to consider cyber insurance, an upgrade to multi-factor authentication is recommended. There is room in the 21-22 town office building network line item to support this effort at $6,650 to actually configure it. But then, you know, there's always a fee. There's $3,720 annually to maintain it. This configuration could also be supported by ARPA funds if you wanted to go that far as well. But I do think we want to make that next step to get us there. It's time for us to step up into the 21st century when it comes to security. The other thing I will say, we did meet with them, with CTCOM, to explore a hybrid meeting solution, which a case for ARPA funds can also be made. So the hybrid meeting solution, we'd have a TV back here, a couple of cameras, we'd have speakers that would be trained on the person that is speaking. We're looking at about $10,000 for the initial setup in here. We could potentially also have a setup in the fire hall, which could be used for training as well as for larger venue meetings. They're gonna price out both of them, and then we're gonna look at which vendors come in, at what prices, and then go to the Economic Recovery Committee for that. But it's time for us to step up to that type of technology.
Can I ask with the Connecticut COP, when you said the ARPA money, so it makes sense to me if we decide to go this route for the initial maintenance, but not for the annual fee?
The
because my
annual fee we
understanding
could,
is- right, okay,
operating
so just wanna make
expenses.
sure.
Yeah, it's a one-time fee.
Right, and the, we talked about this when we were talking with, I think, the first, web, when we had the folks come in to do the web design. We talked about the need for this, and I think one of our first discussions here, we talked a little bit about this, or maybe it was a special meeting. This is important to have the security. I strongly advocate for this.
Yeah.
Cause the cost to the town if we have something happen, and so I'd like to look at what their policy includes, to make sure it's, you know, it covers everything and there's no sort of exceptions. That was something I'd be interested in.
We're not talking about buying an insurance policy, we're talking about positioning ourselves to be ready to apply for the insurance. And the reference
Right.
to a policy and procedure is that just about how
The
we,
safety
the town, are
mechanism.
gonna, how we require our employees to behave, what's our procedure for a terminating employee, how, you know, that, those kinds of procedures, that's what that refers to. So without this step, we won't be able to apply for an insurance policy in the coming year.
Understood.
Is this,
Okay.
Gina, is this strictly administrative as you described?
It's a combination of two things.
Or is there infrastructure?
It's two things. It's the policy and procedure document, plus it's the duo authentication. So when you walk in and you sit down at your desk, you log on and then your phone chirps and says, are you trying to log
Yeah,
on?
yeah,
And yes, you are,
yeah.
or something to that effect.
And there's a configuration piece to this as
Okay.
well.
And
Alright.
it looks at home office too, cause a lot of folks are doing.
If they're doing remote, they already have it.
Yeah,
What they're
so,
looking to do now is extend it to those of us in the office. So when you walk in, no matter where you sign in, it's gonna say, are you trying to sign into the town website?
or not the town website, to the town network.
Town network, sorry. Thank you.
Mhm.
And who's the potential oversight? Did they talk about who in the town hall would be responsible for managing the protocols? Is that gonna fall to the
I would
first
imagine it would
selectman?
be somewhere in this general geography.
Right. Okay.
Okay, the
Somewhere
south side of the building.
Behind this green wall.
In other words, me. So, at this point, I'd like to move to upgrade the town office building accounts to multi-factor authentication pending funding source. Is that,
You mean funding source for the,
whether or not we take it to economic recovery or
for the 6,000?
6,000?
We do
Yeah,
have
we-
the funding in place now,
There is enough money in our account right now to
in the
cover this.
operating budget.
And do we need to decide tonight?
We would like to get this rolling so it happens before the end of the fiscal year.
Right, because we're running out of window in the fiscal year. So if we wanted to come out.
Well, you wanna use 21, 22 money?
Correct.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm comfortable just looking at a quote and acting tonight. I mean, in principle, I'm in agreement, but I think I need a bit more time to.
Okay, well, so will you circle back and let us know what you need to have?
Yeah, I guess. Is there a proposal? Is there, you know, this is, you know, one statement and a bill for $6,000, almost $7,000.
Did they give us anything more official? That may be all they gave us.
Do they have a website?
Well, CT Comp has been providing all of our network. They already provide our networks.
Yeah, but for what the
In the
additional-
second block down on the quote, it says under notes, it says, the ongoing $60 and $250, that's sort of the ongoing impact for the 22-23 budget year. And then under the security services, so you want this, you want more
Where's the
information
master
about-
agreement?
Sorry?
The following will be added to the master agreement.
Yes, which is the
So maybe that's a start.
master agreement, which is the arrangement we have with CT Comp, their monthly invoices.
They didn't
Well,
give
it's their
you an
monthly
actual
services.
agreement?
It's gotta be something that determines
Yes.
what we're paying for.
Was there an
Yeah.
RFP that went out for them initially?
No, well, a long, long time ago, yes.
Okay. So we've
Um,
just had an ongoing agreement that's grown over time and we don't
Yes,
have a standing
yes.
contract that says these services will be
Yes.
provided?
And no
Yes.
other firm can actually come in because now they're controlling our network. They're the only people who could actually.
But
do
this
that.
master agreement has to still exist, right?
Yes,
I'd
but
like
it's
to see the
changed.
master
Yes,
agreement.
but it's changed, and what I would have you look at, in addition to that, I would have you look at the budget materials they submitted when we did the current budget that we just finished. There was a package of information with that, which would have all of the different components. But I will get both of those for you.
Yeah, if you could ask them to provide a general outline in writing to what this is, so that you can share it with Lou and I, that would be helpful, because we weren't at the meeting, and just gives us something to kind of, in theory, it makes sense, and I think we definitely need to we need the cybersecurity. We talked about this months ago, right? So I think this is essential, but without, I agree, with just a bill, it's kind of hard to act on.
Yeah, the one thing
Now might be a good time to get that updated master agreement too.
Well, so one thing I will warn you or caution you, some of these towns, there could be $50,000 deductibles on the cybersecurity, so we have to
Tread carefully.
tread carefully
Yeah.
in this arena, but certainly getting the authentication is a good
Mhm.
first step.
Yep.
I think using ARPA funds it makes sense for the first part. But I think without really seeing the foundation, so do you wanna just table it to the next meeting? We'll
Mhm.
get what information we can.
Well, if we use ARPA funds, we're fine for
For the structural.
We're not bound by the end of the fiscal year.
Right, but you wanna use the fiscal year money for cause this is also another annual
But we
fee.
have them, here's.
Right, the ARPA funds will roll over that.
Roll over, right,
Yeah.
ARPA funds continue on, if we
Right.
have room in the budget.
Right.
Well, we
So-
can't use ARPA though
Let's get the information.
We'll
and-
do this for
and
23rd.
If we needed a quick special meeting, phone call level
Yeah.
meeting to do an approval for this, I
Alright.
get it.
Alright, let's get the
concur.
master and we'll go from there.
And what's,
and an outline of
repeat
what they're proposing, okay?
I just wanna repeat this so we're clear. We're not buying the insurance, we're
We
positioning
understand,
ourselves.
we understand.
And we may choose not to buy the insurance.
We
We
understand.
understand, yep, thank you, Gina.
Yes, thank you, Gina. All right, moving on to old business, sustainable CT. Now, I know this has been hanging for a while, we're waiting for, Stephanie Warren to get back to us. She did reach back and say, yes, the Conservation Commission would take this on. And we did speak at our last meeting that, well, there's a couple of things. In the resolution, and I updated it for today's date, we'd have to figure out who to nominate as our municipal agent, which is an elected official or employee. And although we spoke at one of our previous meetings that Killingworth did not have to be certified, the resolution includes certification. Now, I don't know if that's a challenge or not.
No, I had that resolution originally.
It's
It's in here somewhere, hang on.
see, I have the benefit of having little stickies on my.
When you say it speaks to certification, you mean in the first paragraph?
Okay.
It talks in generalities, it says.
An elected official to serve as Killingworth Sustainable CT contact person for the Sustainable CT municipal certification process, and authorize this person to complete municipal registration on behalf of Killingworth. So there is a process associated with the certification, and you have to have so many programs in play for the certification.
Yeah, if we decide to go that route, right. And I think we all agreed that it doesn't make sense for Killingworth to go that route, but we need to have the person there if that decision was ever rendered. The person is there to authorize, to complete the municipal registration. The municipal registration is different than the certification process. It's just to get us on the books so that we can apply for grant monies, have access to experts, move forward if we decide to do so with the composting. Stephanie Warren is an elected official as well, so she really can wear both hats as the chair of the Conservation Commission, but also isn't she, what is her title? She's on what board was she elected to?
Planning and zoning.
Planning and zoning, right, so.
So she could be our municipal agent. All right, so I move to accept the following resolution supporting participation in the Sustainable CT certification program, amended to designate Stephanie Warren as the municipal agent.
Hold on, I'm not gonna second it. You know that we can remove the words certification if you want to. Just putting that out there. We can leave it in or we can remove them if anybody's uncomfortable with them, but it's our resolution to, place. So I'll second your motion, for the purposes of discussion.
So where are you suggesting that we might or might consider striking the language?
Where we've added Stephanie Warren as the municipal agent for the Sustainable CT municipal certification process.
So we can just remove the
I
words.
just would say, put a period after contact person and strike the,
For the get rid of the word the and just say for Sustainable Connecticut, period, or for Sustainable Connecticut, remove the word the and remove the word municipal certification process and just say for the contact person for Sustainable Connecticut.
and authorize
And
this
authorize.
person to complete the municipal registration on behalf of Killingworth.
Do I have to, for the minutes, do I have to read the resolution? I think I do.
Have at it.
That's the whole page.
Yeah. Buckle up.
All right.
The Town of Killingworth resolution supporting participation in the Sustainable CT Municipal Certification Program. Whereas Sustainable CT fosters inclusive, resilient, and vibrant Connecticut municipalities that provide opportunities for all to thrive by, providing a menu of sustainability actions that build local economies, support equity, and respect the finite capacity of the environment, offering technical assistance to help advance sustainability initiatives, and recognizing and certifying municipalities for their achievements. Whereas Sustainable CT is designed to boost local economies, help municipal operations become more efficient, reduce operating costs, and provide grants and additional support to municipalities. Whereas whereas Killingworth embraces an ongoing process of working toward greater sustainability, selecting which actions it chooses to pursue from the voluntary menu of actions provided by Sustainable CT. Resolved by the Board of Selectmen of Killingworth that we do hereby authorize Stephanie Warren to serve as Killingworth Sustainable CT contact person and authorize this person to complete municipal registration on behalf of Killingworth. Resolved that to focus attention and effort within Killingworth on matters of sustainability and in order to promote the Board of Selectmen's local initiatives and actions towards Sustainable CT municipal certification.
Bless you.
The Board of Selectmen establishes an advisory sustainability team comprised and as may be amended of the Killingworth Conservation Commission, the supervisor of Killingworth's Public Works, and the municipal agent as noted in the preceding paragraph. Resolved that the first meeting of the sustainability team must be held within 90 days of passing this resolution, and that the sustainability team shall meet as frequently as needed, but no less than quarterly. Resolved that the sustainability team shall report annually to the Board of Selectmen on the progress of its activities towards Sustainable CT certification, with reports and presentations made publicly available. Resolved on this 9th day of May 2022 by unanimous vote of the Board of Selectmen of the Town of Killingworth. Before I say aye, just one thing from my discussion. Walt and I spoke with Durham, and they started a pilot food scrap recycling program there. I just asked that the Conservation Commission weigh cost benefits. What we found out is that food scrap tipping fees are three times higher than our current MSW, municipal solid waste tipping fees. Part of that is there's only one state contractor for that, it's New Earth. So we have to think about whether or not this becomes a cost benefit to the town.
I'm surprised to hear that. We at the University of New Haven use Blue Earth and we don't pay anything.
They're paying $75 a ton, and that's per week for the 380 families that participated in the program.
So this is why there's gonna be a group looking at it, but they're also gonna be talking to other groups that are looking at it. And I think, moving in this direction, having experts people to focus on this makes a lot of sense. I've attended several, webinars related to composting recently with some members of the Conservation Commission. And there's lots of things happening all over the state and, obviously all over the country, if not the world in this area, but we'll just, pay attention to it and have folks that are focused. And Walt is gonna be on this committee, on this group, as the
Well, he'll
And,
be able to
uh,
give advisement, because obviously, you know, from a tipping fees, he was with me on the call with Laura Francis and a number of communities. They're looking at whether or not they could put some of the, I think the biggest composting facility that they have right now is up in Southington that they're using. So they're trying to put one closer, perhaps Middletown, which may reduce the cost of those tipping fees. But right now, they're pretty high, especially when you think that 50% of our residents actually have their trash hauled away privately. So, you know, it's just, again, they have to think about the cost and benefits.
I'm gonna make a recommendation that 2 words be changed to accommodate, in the penultimate resolved. It says that the sustainability team shall report annually to the Board of Selectmen on the progress of its activities towards Sustainable Connecticut certification. Strike the word toward and the word certification, and in place of the word toward, say within. So progress of its activities within Sustainable Connecticut, with reports and presentations made publicly available. If you're interested in making sure it's not focused towards certification. And I once you get that down, the question I have is, the supervisor of Killingworth's Public Works, is that you, Nancy, or is that Walter?
That would be Walter.
Okay, all right, so he's gonna be participating, so I think he'll be able to bring to the Board of Selectmen or Stephanie, or together, or to bring to your attention any concerns or ideas they have, but I think this is a great movement towards us becoming greener, as a town, and looking at alternatives, kind of what you've been doing on your campus at UNH. So thank you for making the motion.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. Moving on to Beechwood and the Fair Rent Commission. What I've given you here is, I think you should have received, this spreadsheet is a history of rent increases from 2006 through 2022. So the 2022 increase was a 4.8% increase on their rent. And if you look at inflation from the year before, it seems to be running pace with inflation, but which scares me to no end, because this year's inflation is at 7.7. And although it's italicized here, they could be looking at a 7.6% increase next year if they do keep pace with inflation. The other thing that I wrote down here is the services that they've lost, and you know, simple things like a community phone book and newsletters delivered to each home, which really does build on a sense of community. But it also speaks to a lot of other things, like bushes and shrubs in the yard being trimmed. Now, these individuals are on fixed income, they're paying this monthly lease, they may also have a mortgage on their home, and then they have to, if they're not physically capable, they have to have somebody come in and landscape their property. They used to have 4 maintenance people in the community, now it's down to 1. I think the sales representative is likely rotating around some communities. They don't have a homeowners association. They can have a social club, but they don't have a say of what happens in their community. They've lost twice yearly bulk trash pickup. There is the potential in the new lease for them to be charged for their pets. We've had a couple of septic failures in Beechwood, but now the pump outs have gone from 3 years to 5 years. There's no longer any stump grinding when trees are removed. They no longer have, well, they do get 2 community events, but it is overseen. I think the last one was an ice cream truck. Any retention walls are now the homeowner's responsibility, and there's a number of items in the equipment in the clubhouse that need to be repaired. So, you know, these people, when I went to call, well, I've been with you now 3 times, or with Beechwood, and I had coffee with them, and there's always a large group. They're very concerned. Gas prices are going up. They're maintaining their homes. They also have to pay $45 a month for water, because water is being, because of the challenges with the water, the Connecticut Water Group has stepped in to do the filtration systems, and they're paying $45 a month for that. Bill and Jackie looked into the potential for having water meters put on each of the homes to see if that would cost less for that water bill. Turns out each home would have to pay $3,500 to install that meter. So there's many challenges. I think I've sent you the background information on the Fair Rent Commission. Christina sent that to me. I've given you the state statute links. My ask tonight is that you review the information and speak with residents as you feel you need to. We can, actually, or neighboring towns with fair rent commissions. I did have the opportunity to speak with John Hall over the weekend out of Westbrook. Their fair rent commission was established specifically for their mobile home parks as well. The same is true in Clinton, as Christine is aware. But at this point, I would like to have you do your homework, and by the time we come back on the 23rd, make a motion to establish a fair rent commission here in Killingworth, and then take that to town hall meeting in June.
I looked at this when Christine first brought this up, I don't know, a month or 2 months ago. The Fair Rent Commission, I just have a question, and I don't know if Christine's maybe you can answer this, Nancy. Have any of these towns that you're aware of, the small towns like Westbrook or Clinton, which are bigger than, but have any of those towns been involved in any litigation on behalf of something that's come before the Fair Rent Commission?
That I can find out through Chair. There is the advisory council who oversees it, so I can find out if any of them have pursued litigation.
Who's the advisory council? What is that?
It is a state advisory council of the Fair Rent Commission, so they also engage with manufactured mobile home organizations as well.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Yeah, because that would tell us the risk if we have to set money aside, if we end up, as you had talked about, it's sort of, we serve as a mediator in a sense, but if, I think it makes sense. I'm 100% behind doing this. I just want to know if we need to set money aside for potential legal fees going forward. And I don't know how we do that, but that was the one thing that caught my eye. And for the Fair Rent Commission, who, just if you could be clear, who serves as the Fair Rent Commission?
We would have to appoint members to the Fair Rent Commission, so people living in our community. So consider, as we move forward, we'd have to consider who would be on that. And the Fair Rent Commission only meets when there's a case, when there's a hearing.
And do we have to create an ordinance to allow for this? Because I know in the charter, if we create an ongoing commission like this, it would have to be, I mean, it's perfect timing we're doing, but I don't think the Charter Revision Commission will be done with its work before this would happen. So if this is something we're gonna do and we need to do quickly, if we have to go to town meeting to change the charter for other things, namely, it might be an ideal time to add that to it, but just, if we want to get our ducks in a row to move fast to help them, we probably want to make sure we have the ordinance ready to go, so it might be useful to start.
I'll look to see what the ordinance looks like.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question of Christine, possible? You and I had chatted about the makeup of these committees, and I remember a couple. One was town council, and I think that's obvious. Zoning enforcement officer, building official.
So they actually are engaged in the process. You don't want them on the board. They're usually brought into as sort of testimony when they're
Okay. All right, so they're tools as part of the assessment.
Right.
But the makeup of the board is like any other commission.
I would strongly advise to frame out make up your board through your ordinance, so you're gonna wanna make a certain number of membership on manufactured mobile homes,
Yeah.
number of renters, et cetera, in town, so that you have sort of a well-rounded board. Sometimes they can get off balance, they are appointees that you're going to appoint over time, and as people come and go, they can get unbalanced. So you wanna make sure the membership is representative of what you're trying to achieve, you
Yeah,
know,
okay.
mediation, and collaboration and conversation.
Okay.
Christine, with that advisory board, to follow up on your question, do you have model language for an ordinance that you could give Nancy for us
yeah.
or give us?
Absolutely, I can send over language.
So we don't have to reinvent the wheel,
Well,
right?
I'm sure
Great.
Westbrook and Clinton already has the ordinance in their E-code, so we can take it from there.
Clinton did not, we only set up the framework
Okay.
for number of membership, but not in terms of
Okay.
who they represent. I haven't seen if Westbrook's does, but that is moving forward sort of the guidance to sort of frame it out better.
Yeah, if you can send me that, that'd be great.
So is there model, is there model language? In the statute, I didn't see model language.
It's not that the statute doesn't define the model
Right.
language, just defines the purpose, but
Right.
there's model language in terms of the more recent towns.
Okay.
Clinton has had it on the books for quite some time. Westbrook was 2017?
I think so.
Something along that line, so I'll look to some of the more recent ordinances that are in place.
Thank you. I don't mean to give you more work, but thank you. It'll help us so we don't reinvent the wheel. We can build on it to accommodate. Thank you.
And I appreciate you being here to support Beechwood for sure.
So I just want to be on the record as saying that I'm in support of doing something here. And I'd like to echo Eileen's comments earlier. This is a tremendously important part of the fabric of this town. And we need to make sure that that community is successful, not only for the residents, but for the town itself. And if this is the tool that we need to do it, I'm in support of it.
I concur 100%. The one thing too I would add, the water wasn't, maybe it's a question. Wasn't water initially included in the rent at Beechwood? So I would add to your list on here that water was was it only when Sun took over or did that happen before, just before?
I think it had to do with the
Take a look
PFAS.
what was handed out to you in the year 2011. Water was, price of water, 2012 of water was added. So you see that-
2012?
Yeah, you see the blank?
Actually, 2010. 2010,
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, 2010.
what was added.
Yeah, but you see that there was no increase, you see the double zeros?
Right here where the two dashes are?
Yeah.
Okay, so that was when water was added?
Yeah, because see with Jensen, they gave a very, very small increase the whole time until Sun took over. It was a very, very small increase the whole time. And some years they didn't even increase, if you see, or 1 year, there was no increase at all.
And the retention walls?
Yeah, the retention walls, you know, and they're on a hill.
Yeah,
Mm.
that seems,
They cut back
Yeah.
a lot of things.
yeah, it's crummy in a word. So, so the faster we can move on this?
Yeah, I mean, this was telling. Once we put this together, the numbers were clear.
If you get me the model language, I can work on getting you an ordinance, unless you wanna just give it to the town attorney to do, whichever.
I've already talked to the town attorney about the ordinance for, the fire stipend, so I can add that to this list.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right, moving on, let's see if we can get this one done. Consultant services to review public works. Although I've cleaned that up tremendously, I would like to see it get out. I've made it pretty simplistic.
Yeah, and I think you're about 99% there. There was just one thing that I wanted to check on. Sorry, I gotta keep finding these things. Somebody else gotta give me
You need the little tabs.
the.
Jamie needs the tabs too.
Yeah, you know, it's online, it was in a different order, and so I had everything, I should've just brought my computer.
The difference is theirs gets emailed, I print mine out
Right.
and make my little tabs.
So, oh, this is just a list of the responsibilities. Okay, I misread this.
So the only thing I'm asking them to do is up at the top.
Yeah.
And then I tell
Yeah,
them
yeah.
what they do.
Yeah, okay, all right, I misread this, that it was the capital plan piece of it, and I thought, that really is not part of this, but I understand now it's under the responsibilities. I'm good with it.
Okay. There was 2 questions. Elizabeth wanted to know whether or not we are just expecting them to give a bottom line price to do the work. I think that's what I'd be looking for, is what would it take to get this done? Or do we want to elaborate anymore?
Say that again?
When we send this RFP out, we're not putting any cap on it. We have $20,000 to do this work. Do we want to say not to exceed $20,000, or do we just want to let them give us a bottom line?
I would think that they should put together a project schedule and scope and major milestones, and if they're looking for intermediate payments, they should tie those to completion of certain milestones. Otherwise, we're gonna have no gauge as to where they are and whether they're on track. And then at the end of this, we may not get what we want, and then we get a bill for $20,000.
Well, okay, I got what you're saying.
Schedule, milestones, payment schedule.
And she wanted to know too if we wanted a pre-bid meeting, and in this case, we may want to.
Probably, yeah.
All right.
Do you want then in the specs, do you want it to say schedule, scope, milestones and payment schedule? Do you want those in the specs that are gonna go out for bid?
I think the deliverables, the proposal should include that schedule.
Right, this is
and-
only the spec sheet. This gets wrapped up into
Yeah.
a larger document with some boilerplate to it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, I move to issue the RFP for consultant services to review public works. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Economic Recovery Committee recommendations. Should be a memo dated May 5th.
Near the back.
Keep going.
I move to accept the May 5th, 2022 recommendations from the Economic Recovery Committee and move them to a future town meeting for approval.
A second.
Discussion.
Discussion.
I think that we should take them as individual motions.
I had bundled them all together. I thought the last one we did was bundled as well based on the recommendations that they sent together. I could amend the motion to say, well, that gets, I guess that gets a little. We have a second. Do we want this to fail and then go project 1, project 2, project 3, project 4?
It may not fail.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay.
We didn't have a discussion, so I do have one question.
Oh, I thought we did.
Yeah. I do have one question. So the way these get put in, because they're not a budget item that's created, is that correct?
I gotta find out. We gotta figure out how this is gonna work. I mean, by you all approving this, depending on the size, am I turning around and writing a check tomorrow? And if I am.
No, first of all, this has gotta go to town meeting, remember?
Okay, all right.
Remember, this
Okay.
is only a preliminary approval. Each one of these has to go to town meeting for formal approval, which is where we will do one by one by one by one.
Why does that have to go to town meeting?
Why does that have to go to town
I don't think
meeting?
it does.
We've had, well, remember
No.
we got the feedback from all the towns from the River Cog saying that they wanted it to be transparent and go to town
No,
meeting.
no. It's not required. What
It was
the
at the
river.
last meeting.
Yeah, but it wasn't, it's not a rule for this.
I don't think it's a
It's not
requirement.
requirement. I don't think we need to go to the expense of it. This is expenditures, it came to us through the Economic Recovery Committee. We as a Board of Selectmen, as a legislative body, can make a decision about how the funds are being spent. It is transparent. It's gonna be all over the media probably tonight, so I'm not sure that it needs to go yet before another committee, as long as it meets the requirements of the expenditure through ARPA.
I did send you the list of recommendations that came back from Rivercog. It was part of a meeting a couple of months ago, perhaps maybe 6 weeks ago, where all of Rivercog was saying they were taking these to town meeting to make sure there was a level of transparency. And I could resend it to you.
You can resend it, but I don't know that it's not a requirement for Killingworth. Do you think that we're not being transparent?
Just making sure that the town is aware of it, yeah. And even the money that's going to the fire department, the $25,000, although that's going for a different reason.
That's above a threshold. And that's against a line item, and these are not existing line items.
It's an
This is
interesting
new
question because,
territory.
yeah, because
Okay, so
what
we
happens
need
to an appropriation that's greater than $20,000? I mean, anything over $20,000 has to go by.
Town meeting.
Well, here, we've got,
Or finance time.
Yeah.
Town
$25,000, there's $66,000 for the ambulances,
Yeah.
you know, so there's some numbers
And the
here.
recommendation was, because this was all new territory, they said, you should follow whatever policy, whatever procedure you ordinarily follow to spend money.
Yeah, because this happens all the time, right?
Well, no, and what's unusual about these, there's some things in there that don't exist in our budget, like the ambulance. That's nowhere in our budget. So there's and there's not
The soup kitchen.
nowhere in our
And
budget.
the crier is not in our budget.
Nowhere in our budget.
And
These are
there's some
one-time
mechanics
we have to figure out. But also, I would, I don't know how to articulate this, but I don't want to be writing a check tomorrow until we understand.
Process.
Yeah.
So can I amend or I move to amend the,
You can, it's already been passed.
we can
Do
make,
a new motion.
we can make a new motion to amend the last motion. To what? To pause the payout until we determine.
Well, I think I'm sort of coming back around to maybe bringing this to a town meeting, but where I think we need to draw the line is if it's an expense budget line item, it should be amended to the budget, right? If it's a capital line, it should go to the capital side.
Right.
And we can break it out that way and then just use that vehicle as the communication tool.
And I'm gonna throw something else out here, and I don't have the answer, and that is, when we do things, when we hand money out to somebody else to spend, say for example, we're gonna hand it to the ambulance and they're gonna do something, there's going to be some reporting requirements where we are going to be responsible for how they spend. And now maybe because we fall under that $20 million, whatever that threshold was, that gave us sort of a free pass on the reporting, maybe that frees us, but we're not there, you know, most towns and cities haven't gone through this process, so there's no clear roadmap, but I would want to investigate that as well. If we're handing it over to the COG or whatever we're doing, the COG's gonna do something with it, but we, the town, are responsible for how that money was spent.
So why don't we leave the motion as is, and then if we come up with another process in betwixt and between, we
Well,
can.
I think we should look to the Director of Finance to maybe give some
Okay.
thought to what is appropriate.
Is that recorded?
You know, when you say they are gonna spend, the they is we, the town. And so whatever gets
If
spent.
we're gonna buy whatever, so let's say they're buying a chair, we're gonna buy the chair, then we're okay, but if we're gonna hand the money over to them and they're gonna buy the chair, then there's a reporting requirement. There's an accountability on the part of the town. At least that's what they told us.
Wouldn't it be the same as any other procurement policy that we have?
I'm gonna do some.
So it's our first time.
Yes.
And we probably won't get it again, but we're gonna have more money to spend yet.
Yes.
Coming into it, so we probably do need to figure it out.
Yes.
It's not going to give bonuses to folks on
No.
set. So we know we're not going awry there.
No.
So,
But the simpler, from where I sit, the simpler we keep it, the better, in terms
Right.
of how we report it, so.
So do we know if we can do cut checks to nonprofits?
I believe we can, but I have to,
So that's one simple question,
but I
because
had a
that
couple of
takes
years
off.
to figure this out.
Right, so the questions are, is there a dollar level at which a different process takes place? Can we, if we're under that dollar amount, where do we have to put it? Does it have to go on a budget? Because we don't want to make these budget items, right? These are
No,
one-time
right, correct.
expenditures.
So I got a couple of angles. I'm gonna go to the auditor and say, how do you want me to?
What do you mean, why wouldn't they sit in the budget?
Well, because you'd be creating a line item,
A line
right?
item.
All right, so then the follow.
No, no, no.
Yeah,
follow
that's
the
true,
line.
but then the next year you're gonna have 0, and then,
But we can.
But also, you don't want to create a budget item for something where it's not an ongoing. I
Right,
think
that's what I was saying.
this is one-time ARPA
Sorry,
money
Neil, you're-
that's
No,
being
you're fine.
expended based on something that's very unusual. So to have it a historic sort of expectation
Right,
there, I think
yeah.
it's not a precedent we want to
So we got a couple of things to work. We have just the nuts and bolts of the accounting of it, and I will.
So do
come
we
back
need
to
to
the
make a
board.
motion to pause action on our last action until clarification from Gina? And then we can,
We got one other issue. Project One, that $25,000 is gonna be voted on at the May 16th meeting. So remember, we talked about that at our special meeting. So Project One is that $25,000.
That's cleaner though, because we have a
Yeah.
line item already, and we're going through our normal process, which is an additional amount to that particular line item, over $20,000. That's our normal process.
so the ERC knew that was already on the budget. They knew we'd already approved it, and they put it back in another letter to us to.
Well, they wanted to make sure it was documented. They want to make sure they're documenting all their recommendations.
Even though it was a recommendation that we'd already heard, and, okay.
Was there a comment?
I don't feel appropriate. I'm just gonna share what's going on in Clinton if it's beneficial.
Sure.
So that your chartered accounts is not gonna have a line item for that specific allocation, the ARPA funding, so you're not gonna document it in the same way. But with Clinton, with anybody who has applied outside the government structure, we have had an application process so that we don't have to go back and then audit them after the fact. So I know a number of towns throughout the state are following a similar process so that the application is there, is full disclosure of how they're gonna be using it, how it will be doled out within that organization, is it quarterly, annually, et cetera. And if there is a requirement, because of the way they've communicated the project back to the town, that we do need updates, then it has to be addressed within the allocation, saying you're gonna report back on how it was utilized. That frees you up from that.
I don't think it frees us up. It continues to be our obligation to make sure that they follow up, right?
That is by the application process it freed us, so.
I'm not sure what it freed you from though.
It freed the typical grant process where you're going to go back to the state and document your grant award
Yes.
and how it's utilized, so it's freeing you up from that process. I would suggest just maybe giving a call over to some of the other towns and seeing what the process they're going through, because you're not the only town going through this. It's like growing pains, because nobody knows how to handle this huge influx of money, and everybody wants to make sure they utilize it absolutely correctly. So, I can't imagine how, when you have that large amount of money, how you're going to audit all these different nonprofits if you're handing it out in that way.
Right, which is why in the smaller towns, it makes sense to keep it simple and not do that kind of thing. To keep it, that's why they're allowing the smaller towns to say you are allowed to use it all for your general operating expenses to run your town. That whole lost revenue calculation. So, but we're reaching beyond that a little bit, which is a good thing, but we just have to make sure we know what's expected of us. And if we write the check today and have to produce an accounting of it 4 years from now, who are they gonna throw in jail?
Yeah. All right, I think we're fine where we're at, and we'll figure out process as we move forward. If you need a special meeting for us, by all means.
Okay.
So I just want to be clear that we're giving Gina the direction that it's do nothing at this point other than make a recommendation to us on process.
Right.
Okay.
Do we need to make a motion to do that? Was the last motion, wasn't date certain, right?
I think if we just capture that in the minutes, I think
Yeah.
that would be fine.
Gina, to provide process.
Provide process before any funding is issued to,
Other than the first
Retirement,
item
because it's
of
already in there.
25,000.
Okay. All right, selectmen comments.
I have a couple. So I wanted to, now we just lost Gina for a second, but we'll let the minutes reflect this. I wanted to talk a little bit about the building. And I think folks can see with the back building, and I think the folks that are working on it have done a great job, and I think it's a huge improvement in appearance, but also durability. It's building's going to be weather tight.
And bird tight.
Yeah, bird tight. The HVAC system, it looks like it's actually fine, but we need a new control board, which they've ordered, so that hopefully will have us in air conditioning just in time for the cooling weather. I asked, there was a request somewhere on the previous slips sheet up there about looking at the railing out front, and so we're gonna either replace that or clean it up. The ramp, the ADA ramp that was in the front has since been removed, and I would like to, for the record, thank Richard Plinus for his generosity in helping the town out, and for helping me unload the trailer, and so kudos to you, thank you. Let's see, what else did I want? Oh, I drafted up a custodial RFP. And so right now I'm gonna try and get a few favors from some of my custodial managers just to take a look at it, but something that hopefully we can issue for cleaning services for the municipal facilities around town. The last thing that I wanted to just report out on is I had the roof looked at here, and it's really in terrible shape. Whether we decide to replace it or not, I would ask that for the future capital budget that we, the quote to fix it right now is $22,000. I suggest we put, you know, somewhere upwards of maybe $25,000 in the capital budget for next year for consideration for replacing the roof.
Truss it or just continue with flat roof?
I asked, I asked him if he was gonna put some crickets in it so that we could drain it. It is a flat roof, and it would endure the weather much better if we could, you know, get it to actively drain. I think that's all that I had.
All right, thanks, Lynn. So my comments, a resident stopped by to discuss North Chestnut Hill, a scenic road, and the 22-23 capital plan to triple chip seal it. Come to find out, Chapter 293 Highways Article 4 Scenic Roads states no material changes shall be made or in the type of roadway surface. So chip sealing, unfortunately, is altering the state. So I sent the statute to the town engineer and council for their review and comment. That was the first time Tom Fenton had realized that. So we have Beckwith up for triple chip sealing, we have North Chestnut Hill, and I think there's one other. They're all scenic. Oh, this could also impact future paving projects to Beckwith, Chestnut Hill, Spencer Hill, and Titus
Can you
Cone.
repeat those? Beckwith?
Beckwith,
Titus Cone.
Chestnut Hill, Spencer Hill, and Titus Cone. never had seen this before. Apparently you have.
Sorry, no.
And, you know, the unfortunate thing is, it would save us money if we were chip sealing it, because we have to spend the money on gravel, the money on maintaining those roads, putting down the calcium treatments. But there is this state statute.
What is the statute?
Chapter 293, Highways, Article 4, Scenic Rural Roads.
Yeah, I certainly was aware, but I missed that was on the list to be chip sealed, and I'm very surprised that our engineer, because we had this issue during previous administrations when this was raised, and that's why we continue to grade and put gravel on the road.
Yeah, so just bringing it to everyone's attention. Demand for the building official is outpacing the hours he's available to us, and yet if you look at the building reports, we're up, I think we're up $40,000 this year on building permits alone. I spoke with Gina regarding our budget. You know, there is room to support another building inspector to supplement Jerry's time. The hard part is finding one. That's the challenge. So I've reached out to Richard McManus out of Durham. I talked to Rich about whether or not he had anyone. I also spoke to Rivercog. Everyone's looking to see if there's any additional resources. And oh, by the way, Jerry, our building inspector, also has COVID, so he's out until Friday. So lots of challenges. On a PFAS update, DEEP is going to start their sampling here in June. In speaking with DPH on Friday, we should have a response to our DWSRF application next month, so that we should have more information. And I think I told you before, I applied for that $20,000 community project grant through Joe Courtney's office to begin the detailed design work of a solution, but I have not yet heard back. And alternative housing plan, as a reminder, I know Lou, you can't make it, but the Committee on Alternative Housing has invited us to their meeting on Wednesday, May 18th to finalize the plan. My goal is to have us accept the plan on the 23rd and then have it filed with the state by June 1. So that's the process. I'm done. All right, everyone. Motion to adjourn?
Second.
8:44.